Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to once again have a look at the GE vehicles that are on sale, and now it's Italy's turn. In Italy, you have a bunch of GE vehicles. Basically, all of these are GE vehicles, which is just nuts. The only one which is mainly not is, of course, the F104S TAF, which is a pretty decent vehicle at 11.0. So, one thing I will say about the aviation tree for Italy is you don't need to buy premiums. And I know that sounds really weird, but the tech tree itself is just fantastic. There's so many really good fighter planes in it. The bombers are not great, but you know, they're pretty easy to spade. And all of this area here is just fantastic. So if you want to pick up a premium, there's not really much point because you'll miss out on such a wonderful tech tree to be able to go along with. Marcolin's CR42, this one obviously is the first premium and it's fine. It's probably one of the best biplanes in the game, has one of the best armaments, and also generally has a very powerful engine for a biplane, but also doesn't really maneuver very well, so it can be quite hard in biplane battles. The HE112B1/U2 has the 220mm, which is really nice, but it's also at 2.0, and one of the problems with the 112 is its engine performance is pretty weak, leading to not very mobile vehicle, and with the added weight of the guns, basically means that it's just fat. You can find this with the B-0 as well. A very good firepower, but not really a lot else. If you're playing arcade, I suppose a vehicle like the B1U2 would be a lot more useful, but since I'm more realistic focused, it doesn't really have a place. The 2001 Gruppo is good. It's also, I believe, in the starter vehicles, so just pick it up when that one's on sale. You'll have a much better setup there. You'll have a much better time, which will be nice. And then also you have the IR81C. The IR81C is a vehicle which is very different compared to a lot of others. It's more of a boom and zoom fighter, which you don't really find too much of this tier, so at least it gives you something slightly different. And it also has a really cool paint scheme for for a skin from the good old Gaijin market, so you can actually get a Luftwaffe paint scheme for it. It also got added some bombs and also rockets to make it a bit more useful, but this is definitely different compared to a lot of other stuff that you'll see in the game. So for me, it's fun, but also usually the game is over before you get everything sorted and ready to go. Then you got the Spitfire Mach 5 B-Trop. It's once again a very good Spitfire. It's not the best Spitfire though, because it doesn't have as good aerodynamics as a lot of the other Spitfires, and it also only has the Mach 2s. But the Mark II Hispanos are still fine, they're just not as good as the Mark Vs. It's as simple as that. There are better options once again in the tech tree than this, but it's still a solid defensive flying vehicle. The Duck is a Duck is a Duck. This one has the MK103, which means that it can punch through ground targets pretty effectively. The main thing that the HS129 has going against it is its engine power being very low, which pretty much means that the vehicle can't ever dogfight or do anything like that. So if you have air superiority, you can do a lot with the gun. Does that happen often, especially in ground vehicles or naval? Not particularly, so it's not very useful. BF109 G4 has kind of the same issue. This vehicle has a lot of different mechanics added to it. It has the Schrag music, for example, which is right here. It also has the big old radar in the front, the FUG-220 search radar. It has MK108, it has MG151s, it has MGFFs, it has everything you would want in terms of guns, and also it can bring bombs as well. But once again, it can't defend itself, so you need air superiority in order to be useful, and that doesn't happen enough. So it's much better to just play some of the stuff in the tech tree. The G55S is a god amongst men. This is probably the exception to the rule of picking up vehicles like this. The G55S, if you are going to pick up a premium for Italy to grind stuff through, this one is the one to go for. It's an insanely powerful vehicle. It has access to some really good fight characteristics, and as you can see, we played 7 games in it, we won every one, 37 air kills to 0 deaths. I didn't need to play it anymore, it hasn't changed in BR, nothing's really changed around it, still incredibly powerful, with its MG151s and also with its general flight characteristics. This is one of the most perfect prop planes in the game to play and is very fun, so I would highly recommend it if you haven't. The BF-109G2 sits there as a reminder of how useless the BF-109 is compared to the G55S, so if you pick this up, you must be very much a German fanboy, because you would be silly to pick this up over the G55S. It has all the standard stuff the BF-109 has, even the incendiary bombs, but it's just not useful. It also has a Romanian Air Force camouflage, which is quite nice, but at the same time, not really that interesting. Then you got the G91R4. So this one, its glory days are past it, but it's still very good. Still has 4 AIM-9Bs at 8.7. Still has all of the ASs as well. You just lose some. You lose some 50 cals to mount the AS-20s or the AA-20s if you're a psycho. But yeah, this still is a very good multi-role vehicle. It's just not as good as it used to be, but still is up there. Italy kind of lacks a lot of CAS at higher echelons, and this can give you a piece of CAS which is not available in the higher echelons for them. So definitely worth it, definitely a good vehicle, just nowhere near as good as what it was. Please don't dogfight in this thing, you'll just lose. Use the missiles from range, slow down the targets, and then finish them off with the guns. Then you have the Ariete, which is the opposite playstyle. This thing is a turn fighter. This thing actually works incredibly well in that way. And I spaded the Sparviero. It was super fun to play, but then they started upping these things BRs. I wouldn't even want to touch the Ariete at the moment just because of its BR. I don't think it would be a very fun vehicle to play, especially since there's a lot of monsters at 9.3 at the moment, and also 9.7. They did put up a bunch of vehicles, though, which basically preyed upon the Ariete, but would have to see what the matchmaking is around it. Usually what happens with vehicles like this, when I see them, there's usually like 1 or 2, maybe at most on a team, and then what ends up happening is they survive longer than most, but can't really get anything done, and then they get swarmed, because they can't get anything done apart from defensively fly, and try and shoot people from overshooting. And then they just get missiled or something like that happens. So it looks like a fun vehicle, but I've just seen it get annihilated too often. So overall, the aviation vehicles for Italy are okay, like most of them are pretty good, but the tech tree ones are just so much better. There are no helicopters that are available for Italy for some reason. There's only the T-129, which you can't get, so that kind of sucks. So let's just go straight on to the ground forces. Ground forces for Italy is kind of odd. They have some pretty fun BRs, but overall they have a lot of weaknesses. One of the things that is quite nice is the SPGs that they have. You know, the Breda's pretty fun, and then the 1953 is quite nice, the Stug 3 as well. But there's a lot of low-tier stuff which doesn't feel very nice to play. Like, a lot of these certain Moventes here are not very good. A lot of the rank 1 is not very good apart from the autocannon, so it sometimes may be worth picking something up to kind of get you through there. For me, the starter pack is always a much better option, though, for that. The L640 is one of the newer premiums that they added. This was because they moved the L6 to basically BR 1.0. This one actually has some decals on it, including a very suspicious looking, what I think is a lion or a tiger, and then of course some insignias around the place. So I think that's pretty cool. You can also see him here as well. But the L640 is cheap. I think it's worth a go, just because it has the autocannon and also has the HVAP attached to it, so it has nearly 50mm of pen. If you're a person who's starting off in the Italian tech tree, this one really isn't a bad pick. Then you got the M1340. This one is a bad pick. I don't know why this thing and why all of the other ones keep going up in BR. The 47mm is incredibly weak as a gun, and it means if you run into any type of armor at all, such as this thing can see B1 TERS, you will not be able to pen it. So it's okay against stuff with no armor, and very bad against stuff with armor. It has pretty bad targeting speed, and overall not great mobility, so overall not good. I'd rather get the L6 actually. Same with the M1441. This vehicle, the major thing that it has is a 13.2mm hull-mounted machine gun, which is completely useless in the game, and also has a very weak 47mm gun with a weak 47mm round. This thing will just cause frustration. Don't bother with it either. The Silere Sahariano, though, may be slightly different. It's a lot lower profile. It plays a lot like a Crusader, is probably the way to put it, and it's also quite cheap. I think it's part of the starter pack as well, though, so it might be worth picking it up with the starter pack. It has good gun depression, which is a big plus for it. It has a good reload rate on the 47mm, and also it does get the same round as the 2.31, but it has a bunch of things which, you know, are best on it. Its mobility is better. Its targeting speed is better. Its general armor with its angle is usually going to be more beneficial for you. So, and also it's, you know, a rank 2, which means that you can do your first daily with it. So it's not a bad pickup. I think there are better ones that are available, but as a 2.7, if you can run it with stuff like the AB43 and also the M3A3 and the M15, maybe you can have a good time with it. The M4 Hybrid's also really good. The only thing that sucks about this vehicle is it is not a rank 3. If this was a rank 3, this would be a must buy for this tech tree, because the hybrid is really good. It's basically a mixture of two Shermans. You've got the M4A1 hull, but I'm not sure about the turret. It might be an M4A2 or an M4A4. I can't entirely remember, but it has the stabilized 75mm, which is really nice, and then also it has the 50 cal on the top, which is a really good combo for any vehicle which is around the place. The hybrid is good, you know, it works very well, but at 3.7 it is a little bit dodgy because you've got the rank 3 M4A4, which is right here, so you can run it for dailies, but it would just be nice if this was rank 2 just to make it a little bit easier. Then you got the Leoncello. Don't bother with this, it's terrible. The gun does not make up for all of the weaknesses of the Semavente chassis, which is shared with all of these. The Panzer 4G, though, is a vehicle which is rank 3 and also is 3.7. This one is your standard Panzer 4G, which, as you've seen, has gone down in BR a bunch, but it hasn't gone down in BR because it's not effective. It's gone down in BR because certain nations have very strong 4.0 and 4.3 lineups, so the Panzer 4G is still good. Like, it still works very well. Its armor is weak, but its mobility is good, and its gun is incredibly good for 3.7. Also, very good gun depression, good reload, good pretty much everything. So this one has something to do dailies in, and also specials, and all of that is really good alongside the M4A4, and also the aviation like the SM91 and the C205 that the Italians have access to. The M26 DC Ariete, no good. Very icky is the way I would describe it. This one has never been in a good position. I've always said the Pershings feel just bad at the BRs that they're at, and the main reason for this is because their armor doesn't hold up, they aren't very mobile, and the gun has issues penetrating a lot of the heavies which you find around these BRs. So even with the M82 shot, there are a lot of heavies that you just can't pen frontally, and they can just look at you and you will die. And since this thing is not in the American tech tree, you can face those American heavies, which will just look at you and you will die. So for me, when I have a look at a vehicle like this, I really don't like it. It doesn't feel good to play. There are much better options, and also it's a bit of a weird BR for Italy because you have a bunch of these light vehicles which are super fun to play, and the standard M26 as well. So why would you stick this in the lineup apart from if you want the bonuses, but the bonuses aren't even that high anyway. If you're going to look for something like that, I would go for the M60A1 Ariete, which you can run with the OF40, which is a much better pickup in that regard. This vehicle, the DC Ariete, has access to no stabilizer on the 105mm, but it has access to all of the other standard stuff of the M60A1 series. It has some pretty cool stuff, you know. Obviously the 105 is very good with the heat that it has access to, the M456. It has the standard rangefinder, and what you'll get out of the M60 is just a standard MBT experience. Decent mobility, decent armor, apart from the cupola, which is a problem, but everything else is really good on it, and also stuff like commander's controls, which has made playing vehicles like this so much easier compared to before. So if you can hide the cupola, this one will do you really well and be a great backup to the OF40. The OF40 MTCA also is another GE one nowadays. This one's a good vehicle. The only letdown it has is it doesn't have access to NVDs in the form of thermals, only gets standard NVDs. And doesn't get DM33, instead just 23, but 23 is still good. The OF40 is a fat Leopard, so basically it's just a bit more of a chunky Leopard, and it's got a better engine. It has the 1000 horsepower engine and can motor around very effectively. And with the fact that it has the laser rangefinder coupled with the DM23 on the 105mm, it's a very good machine. Like, there's no two ways around it. As long as you don't need to rely on thermals, which many people don't, then it can work very well for you. I think one of the interesting things about the tech tree for Italy is 8.7 is insanely strong. So Centauro 1105, OF40 Mark 2A, then you've also got the VBC if you want to throw that in. You can throw in the Sedan as well. The other thing is 9.0 is also incredibly strong with the VCC 8060, Leopard 185, and Centauro 1105 Romor, plus the other vehicles I just listed, and also the OF40 MTCA. So this can be a mega lineup for many years to come, and the MTCA can be a perfect part of it as you push forward. Italy obviously has a naval portion as well, but I think it's fair to say that the Italian naval stuff is pretty weak. They have got a lot of additions which have made them better over the last period of time, so it might be worth having a look at them, might be worth seeing what's going on. So for coastal, you got the MAZ 569. This is very similar to the MAZs which are sat here. It has a 20mm and also a 6.5mm and 2 torpedoes. So probably similar to this one the most, the 561. And I mean, it's not very good. Like the place where it has the 20mm is not a great firing angle. You know, you can't fire straight forward, which is a problem. And then you have obviously the torpedoes too. As a reserve, it's not that bad, but it's just not great. I think it would be better just kind of grinding out these vehicles as you go. Then you have two higher tier ones. You got the Sparviero, which is very similar to the PGO2, which is incredibly powerful. But this one has the 76mm Otto Melara on it, and I would actually prefer the Vulcan. The Otto Melara is a very good gun. You can pretty much two-shot most PT boats, but when it comes to larger stuff, you can generally do, you know, a decent amount of damage to it. But the rounds that you have access to, this ready use, the 85, you'll end up running out pretty quickly, and then you only have 30 to actually put in with it. And since you don't overpressure or, you know, hull break, whatever you want to call it, the good old naval ships, you'll end up in a situation where they'll be able to shoot back at you. And since the gun is a lot larger target than stuff like the PGO2, then it can be a bit of a pain. The overall mobility of the vehicle is very fast. It can run around the place very well. There's just a lot of stuff with more armament than it, and generally, you know, a lot more aggression is probably the way, since they can run around. And then you got the Falaga. The Falaga is one of the Gabbianos. The Gabbiano got added more recently. It does have a 100mm on it. The 100mm should be able to donk other coastal vessels, but this thing, after that, doesn't really have a ton on it. It has a dual Bofors on the back. It also has two 20s on it, and also a few torpedoes. The main thing that matters about a vehicle like this is if it gets access to different DMs. Like, does it get access to the standard coastal DM that you see, or does it end up being in a what's the word? Does it end up with kind of like what I class as destroyer DMs, which makes it a lot more powerful? Even if that's the case, it doesn't have too much. It doesn't have too much stuff here, and also you will see a lot of destroyers because it's basically at those BRs which you find destroyers at, so that would kind of suck for it. It's also labeled as a sub-chaser, so it should get the nice spawn, so at least that's good for it. I just wish I had a bit more armament. For the coastal side of things, you have the Aquilone, which is just a copy of, I believe, the Aquila, is it? No, sorry, it's the Turbine. So it's a good starter premium. It'll give you a little bit of a boost to start the tech tree with, and since a lot of the Italian destroyers are not as good as many others, it gives you a little bit of a kick up on the competition to just get through it quicker, you know? The 120s are okay, they're not great. There's a lot better guns than it. It does have the 340mm, but they're generally useless as well, so not brilliant. The Genieri is probably the one to go for the Italians. I apologize. This one is the vehicle which has access to the 5-inch guns. It has 4 of them in single turrets, and they can do a lot of damage. Plus, it has 3 dual 76mm on it, which can be used as dual-purpose guns as well. At rank 2, you can get this and research pretty much most of the Blue Water tech tree, since a lot of it is in rank 3. So you can use this at 4-3, along with the Verrazano and also the Corazzieri, and have a pretty good time. So I think this is kind of the hidden gem of the tech tree. It does have the HEVT, has the common, has the HE. You can do pretty much whatever you want with it, and this one's not too bad. The Tigre is absolutely terrible. Once again, 120mm guns, very long profile, meaning that it's a lot easier to actually hit. Absolutely no armor at all. And also secondary armaments are also very poor. The Leon class is not good. It doesn't work well in War Thunder. It doesn't fit the meta or anything like that, and generally just feels awful to use. So don't bother with the Tigre, basically. Not a great vehicle. Then you got the Polar. The Polar is just the general Zara class, which you have the Zara in the actual tech tree. This is the one that you get, which, if you want to grind out the whole tech tree the most efficiently, it has the 203mm on it, which is quite nice. After using the Trento quite a lot, I do enjoy the 203s. Just at slower BRs than 5.7. It has the 100mm duals on it, it has the 37s, it has the 13.2s. Overall, it's a completely fine vehicle. It's just, is it going to be as good as the other vehicles you face? No, but it does have some good rewards on it, and it will get you to the higher echelons of Italy as quick as you can go. So overall, it's a bit rough for the premiums for naval, but the Genieri is probably the one to go for. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Millie Draper, Juan the Panda, Nick R. Cupila, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie B. Young, Peter Grayling, Jerry Provolt, Bareen, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, Derek R., and Lafouche for supporting the channel.